All right, so I wanted to make a video on my experience and my process of overcoming depersonalization and derealization. I imagine there's probably a couple of different kinds of people that are watching this video. People that don't really understand what they're going through just yet, and they haven't nailed down that it's depersonalization or derealization. There's also people that are probably watching this video that have been dealing with it for a month, a couple of months, and then maybe even people that have been dealing with it for an extended period of time. I've seen up to several years, which I do want to say right off the bat, since I said that, you don't have to deal with this for several years. There are ways of overcoming this, and I believe that it's entirely possible for people to overcome it much faster, and that's hopefully what I'm going to shed some light on in this video. So before I start, a couple of disclaimers. I'm not like a content creator, right? I do work with video for my full-time job, hence why it kind of looks nice. But I don't regularly create videos of myself, but I feel called, I feel uniquely qualified to make this video because I went through this myself. I remember how horrible it was when I was in the trenches of dealing with this and how little resources there were online of overcoming it. Another disclaimer, I'm not a medical healthcare professional of any kind. This is strictly educational. This is my story, call it a testimony if you will, but I'm strictly here to give you the process that I took to get out of this situation and hopefully shed some light and maybe steer you in the right direction. So I want to quickly talk about how I came into experiencing derealization and depersonalization. Maybe you can connect with my story a little bit. I know people tend to come into the feelings in different ways, and we can talk about those so that maybe it can validate the way that you started feeling depersonalization or derealization. Also, from now on, I'm probably just going to call it DPDR so I don't have to say it so much. But now you know that is what it is. That's the acronym. That's what people call it online. So I started feeling that way in 2018. And I was sitting in a restaurant. It was morning time. We were eating breakfast. And it was actually the start of Christmas break. My girlfriend at the time, now my wife, we were going to her parents' house because we met in college. It was during college. We were going to her parents' house for Christmas break, and it was the morning that we were going to leave. So we were eating breakfast in town. I was sitting there eating breakfast, and then all of a sudden it just felt like I zoomed out. So pause, side note here. I don't think I ever really experienced a true panic attack before. I had like little generalized anxiety about like health problems that I would have. I had a bad back at one point and overcame that. But I did experience a lot of anxiety around those things. So I kind of said like, yeah, I'm scared of having a chronic illness. I'm scared of medical issues, right? Other than that, I did some pretty extraordinary things up until that point in my life where I didn't experience any heavy anxiety. I moved across the country. I left an entire life behind to go to a college out west. And I was in a really strict degree program for a couple of years. I ended up switching into more of a business major, which was still pretty stressful. So I'm going to get back into the story about in the restaurant. I was taking, I think, 18 or 19 hours of credits in college. I was under a lot of stress. Money was tight. I was living on student loans, and we had just got done with finals, right, for that semester. And so I'm sitting in that restaurant, and then all of a sudden, it feels like my perception just zooms out, right? And I felt extremely detached, and I didn't immediately think that I was having a panic attack. I wasn't just sitting there ruminating on my thoughts. I was having a good time, and this feeling just came out of nowhere. And so I tell my girlfriend, I'm like, I think like I feel really sick, and I'm kind of shaky, and I didn't want to start explaining the feeling yet because it was a really, really weird feeling, and I would probably sound crazy if I started to try to explain it. So we went back to my house. I took a shower. I drank water. And I'm just sitting there completely disconnected from what's going on around me. And I start to look at my hands, and they don't feel like my hands. And obviously, if you're explaining this to somebody that's never experienced it, they're like, "Oh, you're going crazy." So I immediately think like, "Oh man, am I going crazy?" You're not. But that's what I started feeling. So I want to shortcut the story a little bit, but basically I dealt with that feeling with no answers for about 6 months on a daily basis. Luckily, it was the start of Christmas break when it first hit me, because I was terrified. Like, I had no idea what was going on. And I actually ended up telling my girlfriend, like, I can't go with you to your parents' house for Christmas break. Like, I'm really sorry, but I don't know what's going on. And maybe I'm just sick, and I shouldn't go to your parents' house while I'm sick anyway, right? So then I'm thinking maybe I'll sleep it off. The next morning, I had about 2 seconds in the morning when I felt normal. I woke up and I started looking around, and I looked at my hands, and then boom, the feeling was back. And you might relate to this. It just kept coming back. Every day that I woke up, it was back. I ended up going to urgent care. I thought that maybe I had an ear infection and it was messing with me, and maybe that was vertigo that I was feeling. So I ended up going to my primary care physician, and for the first couple of months, we thought that it was vertigo, possibly like BPPV. And so I was doing all of these Epley maneuvers. I was going to the chiropractor, like maybe my neck messed up a little bit and it was causing this vertigo. But the doctor kept saying like, yeah, you can feel really dizzy and off balance. And I'm like, well, I feel like maybe I feel a little dizzy, but like I'm not off balance. I just feel like I'm not really here. And I just kept saying that. I feel like I'm not really here. I feel like I can't, like when I touch things, that I'm not actually touching them. And that's a really weird thing to say. And none of the doctors that I saw knew what was going on. So a piece of advice, if you think that this is something that you're dealing with, exhaust all of the other medical possibilities that it could be, right? That's the number one thing, because DPDR is not dangerous to your health per se, right? It doesn't put you in medical danger. It doesn't get worse than what you're feeling right now. You might have like varying degrees of feeling disconnected, but it doesn't go beyond feeling disconnected. It's not like psychosis. It's not anything like that. So if that is what you're dealing with, then realize that that is the only thing that you're dealing with. And I'm going to get into more about how that's actually connected to something deeper and larger than just the symptom of DPDR. So definitely exhaust all of the avenues of medical. You see your primary care physician. If you have health insurance, I don't know where you are listening to this, but you should try to get an MRI, make sure that there's nothing wrong with your brain, right? Get blood work done, make sure that you don't have any levels that are off. And so I did all of those things, and everyone just said, you're perfectly healthy. And I remember sitting in my primary care physician's office, and he had all these test results, and he was like, everything says that you're perfectly healthy. And I was just like, man, and I was really upset. And he was like, I don't think I've ever seen somebody so upset to know that they are perfectly healthy on paper. And I was like, then you obviously don't understand what I'm going through, because what I feel is that there's something really, really wrong. And the fact that it's not coming up on paper is terrifying, because it means that it might not be something that I can fix. Side note, you can fix it. I didn't know that at the time. That's like 3 months into this process. So I'm just going to quickly go through the things. Like, I thought that I had MS. I thought that I had psychosis. I thought that I was going crazy. And, another doctor that I talked to said, well, good news is if you think you're going crazy, you're probably not, because people that go crazy don't know that they go crazy. So I was like, okay, so maybe I'm not going crazy. And then I stumbled across a couple of resources, one in particular, and I might say her name wrong, but her name is Joey Remenyi, and she lives in Australia, and she is a vestibular audiologist. And she has a course and a book called Rock Steady. That was really the pinnacle to my healing process, because although it was a course for overcoming vertigo and tinnitus, which I thought that vertigo was one of the things that I had, she was explaining all of my symptoms like really specifically, like I thought, this is it, right? But the mechanism that she used for overcoming vertigo and tinnitus was very transferable to overcoming DPDR. So I thought that maybe I had 3PD, which is like this ongoing dizziness after a bout of vertigo that people deal with for 12 or 15 years sometimes. So I went through her course, and it was heavily reliant on this idea of healing through neuroplasticity. That's a resource that I would highly recommend you look into. Look into neuroplasticity healing, and it's basically like cognitive behavioral therapy, rewiring your brain to think more positively about things, not letting yourself spiral. Because what I'm going to get into here is really going to explain why this works so well. So again, I'm not a medical professional, but obviously I did a ton of research on this while I was going through it, and found a lot of good information. So depersonalization and derealization is a symptom of anxiety or panic, right? So if you have anxiety, maybe a symptom that you have with your anxiety is like a fast beating heart, or your hands get sweaty, or your fingers are tingling, or something like that, right? So people experience anxiety and panic differently. I'm assuming, since you're watching this video, we are one of the unlucky ones that a symptom of our anxiety is depersonalization and derealization. And people experience this too. It's a natural mechanism for your body to disconnect, like cognitively, to traumatic experiences. And your body, if you have anxiety or panic at the time, your body thinks that you're going through a traumatic experience, whether you are or not, and disconnects you from reality. The problem lies in this loop of being scared of feeling that way, and then it causing you to feel that way, and then being scared that you do feel that way. And it's just this cycle. And you can break the cycle, but without understanding the underlying mechanisms on why you feel this way, it can be really hard. And I want to title this video the last video that you'll ever need on DPDR, because one of the big things is you have to stop researching. You have to stop looking at comments in the sections of the videos that are about this, and saying, man, this person's been dealing with it for X amount of years, and I've only been feeling it for a month. And then you start to catastrophize, and you feel like, I'm never going to get out of this. And that feeling that you're never going to get out of it is a self-fulfilling prophecy of you never getting out of it. You can get out of it. Everyone can get out of it. But if you feel like you can't, then you're not going to. You have to believe, and you have to realize that you can. So that's kind of my story on how I developed it. And I would say those symptoms in the scary part of all of it lasted like a year and a half before I really got some answers. And I don't remember the specific time when I got the answer of like, this is probably DPDR. But I do remember I was going to a vestibular neurologist, and I was doing vestibular rehab because I thought what I had was vertigo or vestibular neuritis. And so I was doing all of these exercises that he put me through, and they weren't really helping. Like, maybe they were easing the underlying anxiety, thinking that they were helping. So it did get a little bit better. But I remember I went into the office, and he did his little thing where he looks at my eyes, and I didn't have a nystagmus. And he was like, okay, so I think that we're done with therapy. I think you're good. And I was like, well, I still feel like this. And that means that I'm not better. And then he had a talk with me, and he was like, I think that this might be anxiety. And I was like, it's not anxiety. There's something wrong with me. Like, I have anxiety about what's going on with me, but it in itself is not anxiety. I feel all of these feelings, and I feel detached, and there's something wrong, I think. And he was like, I think that it's anxiety. I think you should talk to this person. And I walked out of there so upset. I didn't even talk to the person. He pointed me down the hall and said, you should talk to him about it. And I was so upset about him telling me that it was all in my head, that I just left, and I didn't even talk to him about it. But I slowly came to the realization that it was this depersonalization and derealization. So I want to talk about how I quote unquote fixed it. And I'm sorry, this is going to be a long video, but if I put myself back in my shoes a couple of years ago and think about whether or not I cared if a video about this was long or not, I was consuming all of the information online, articles, blogs, forum questions on Reddit, YouTube videos, buying courses. So I don't think you're going to be too upset about this course being long, or this video being long. So I want to talk about how I fixed it. So going back to this neuroplasticity idea, I'm going to look up what exactly the definition is, and then I'll start talking about it a little bit. Okay, so Google says neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to change and adapt over time in response to experiences. So in general, this is like, okay, an event happened, I assigned a belief to that event and it gave me this reaction, and then it turned into a habit, and now that is a part of who I am. And that's in the future, if I don't cognitively think about how I want to react to this situation, I'm going to react in the way that I did in the beginning, the reaction that I assigned to it in the first place. And the more that you react in that way, neurons that fire together wire together. So the more that this event happens and the more that you react a certain way to that event, the more likely that you are to always react in that way to that event. You create this superhighway of neural connections in your brain that allow that reaction to happen much easier, and it creates habits and just the way of living, right? So the more that you dwell on a thought, right? So my cycle, whenever I had the DPDR really bad, was I would start to feel it. I would start panicking about the feeling because maybe I'm in public, maybe I'm in college. And by the way, I had the feeling all the time. It was just varying degrees. So maybe I would be sitting in my statistics class and I would look up at the board and then I would just feel it really bad. Like I would be writing and then I would look up and then everything would just feel really disconnected. I would start thinking, I can't believe I still feel like this. It's never going to go away. How am I supposed to lead a normal life? Whenever I get a real career, like how am I supposed to just go into work every day and not have bad days? So I would begin this thought loop that would just make it worse and worse and worse. So the first thing that I started doing was I would recognize the beginning of that spiral. And in the beginning, it's almost like you're faking it until you make it. You start to feel the DPDR and you catch the thought as early as possible when you start to catastrophize the situation, and you catch it as early as possible and you say, okay, I am not going to think that next thought that I always think. And no matter how bad you want to think, like I'm never going to get over this, you just think, oh, there's that feeling again. And you immediately put yourself in a situation that you love. You're not going to feel like, oh, like you're going to think like, if you love the beach, okay, I'm on the beach. I know it sounds really cliche for anxiety, but like think about that place that you really love, or like that person that you really love, or that game that you really love playing, and immediately start thinking about that and shove out all of the other thoughts that are coming to your head. For me, I love like the woods. I love the forest. I love like backpacking and hiking. So immediately whenever I would feel the feeling and my first thought would be, I can't believe I feel like this, I would immediately like just close my eyes and put myself in the woods. And I would think about, and this is like a form of mindfulness, right? I would think about the smell of the trees. What does it sound like to walk through this particular trail that I like to hike up north from here? And what does it smell like? What time of day is it? That's going to dictate the smell, right? Like like if the heat's coming down on the grass, does it smell like the grass just got cut? Is the water flowing loud? Is it springtime? Is the snow melt coming down? Is it dried up? And so like you go down this rabbit hole of what exactly does it feel like to walk through this forest right now? And you just fill your brain with those thoughts to drive out all the other thoughts. And it's so hard at first because your cortisol, your adrenaline is up because of the initial feeling and the initial thought. But when your cortisol and your adrenaline is up, that's when you're really digging those neural pathways. That's why like traumatic experiences just stick with us so hard, because when it raises, and I'm not a medical professional, but from what I understand, when your cortisol and adrenaline spikes is whenever you are really burning neural pathways. So it works against you, it works for you if you're able to control it. So I would just think about all those things, and then that takes a while. I'm sure it's different for other people, and it's, you know, a case by case basis. But that took a long time for me to get to the point where it was natural for me to start going to these nicer places in my mind whenever I would start to feel the feeling. I think the second step to this is you really have to realize that this is as far as this symptom goes. It's not going to hurt you. It's not going to do anything more than make you feel disconnected. And the underlying root of it is anxiety, and anxiety is treatable. For me personally, I did not find success in medications. I've read that most people don't, but there's this holistic life approach to it that will help you in the long run, because it'll make you better at life in general and handling anxiety in general. I mean, I have a perfectly normal life now where I can handle relatively stressful situations without feeling this feeling. So I think the second step, like I said, is really realize that it's not going to hurt you. Really put that in your mind, that it's not going to hurt you. And then eventually it became this game of, like, when I would feel it, I would say, all right, bring it on. Like, I'm of course I feel like this right now. This is inconvenient. Let's just get it out of the way. Like, bring it all on, bring up all the feelings, make me feel disconnected, you know, do your worst. And this almost taunting of the feeling just de-weaponizes it. I mean, it just completely disarms the feeling of being able to hurt you in any way. Because, I mean, at what point in life do you, like, walk up to a grizzly bear and say, do your worst? You know, if you did, like, the grizzly bear would destroy you, right? But when you do it to a feeling that actually has no medical implications, right? It's not actually going to harm you. It starts training your brain to realize that this feeling is not harmful. You might know that just because I said it or other people are saying it, but you have to train your subconscious to know, like, okay, if he or she is saying this feeling means nothing to me and do your worst, it must not be dangerous. So your brain starts to learn that it's not dangerous. So I think that's the second step, is, like, give up. Give in to the feelings. Recognize that this is your new normal, even though it isn't. For now, it is, and it is a step. You can't go from step 2 to step 7. There's 2, 3, 4. So that next step is realizing you can't hurt me. Bring it on. Give me those feelings of DPDR, and, you know, so I can go on with my day. So some resources that I would recommend looking into. First of all, obviously that Rock Steady book by Joey Remenyi, or Remenyi. I'm not sure how to say her last name because I haven't heard it out loud, but you can go through her book. It's a very good approach to dealing with, like, the mechanism itself is healing through neuroplasticity, and it's very good for, like, anxiety, which is the underlying mechanism which is causing your DPDR. I would also recommend looking into Joe Dispenza. People have different beliefs about Joe Dispenza, and some people think that he's bogus, some people think he's not, but, you know, the underlying stuff that he talks about is neuroplasticity and the ability to change yourself. So he has a book called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. I think it's called that. Breaking the Habit of Being, yes. And that is another resource for neuroplasticity and changing your way of thinking. Again, this is all rooted in psychology, like behavior, like cognitive behavioral therapy, the ability to actually change the way that you react to things, and it's all stems from your thinking loops and breaking them and changing them into something else. So I would recommend that. I would recommend listening to the Huberman Lab podcast. Andrew Huberman is he's a neuroscientist or ophthalmologist at Stanford, and he has a podcast, and he has a really good episode on neuroplasticity. And I would really look at those resources, and from a standpoint of belief, like, I believe that I can change through this process that's being laid out for me. Another barrier to healing is all of this searching that you're doing specifically about DPDR. This is why I want this to be the last video that you watch, and I want you to start focusing on the actual life changes that you should make to start getting over this, instead of dwelling on it and looking at symptoms and looking at forums and looking at other people that are suffering. Focus on yourself so that you can get to the point, like maybe you get to the point like me, that I'm able to make this video and talk about it without being scared of the feelings, because they don't come back anymore. So just, you have to stop searching for answers and look into these other avenues of healing, like neuroplasticity. Another thing that I would say, some specifics about what I had to do to actually start healing, is I had to get off caffeine. Take all of the advice for a normal anxiety healing process. I had to get off of caffeine. I love coffee. I drink black coffee. By the way, I'm back to it. I drink coffee every day now. But while I was healing, I had to give it up. And I drank, like, I'm the guy who does the drip coffee. I had a couple cups a day, and I drink black coffee because I love the flavor. And I had to give it up because I realized that it was heightening those feelings. Like, every time I would drink coffee, 30 minutes later, I would have those heightened feelings. And I was like, maybe I have to stop drinking caffeine. I had to get off of caffeine. I had to start going to the gym. Exercising works wonders for reducing those cortisol levels, putting your mind in a better place to be able to heal. Getting the sunlight every morning. Look at like Huberman's protocol for just for good sleep. Sleep is a huge piece of this. You probably realize that you're fatigued all the time, feeling like this because your body's response is really tiring to anxiety and DPDR. So look at Andrew Huberman's. I'm going to link all this stuff in the bottom. Andrew Huberman's sleep protocol, getting daylight. It's within like 15 minutes of waking up. Maybe go for a walk. Like, all of these things to just like start living a healthier life. And what I will say to kind of put an end cap on all of this is, I can genuinely say that this is the best thing that ever happened to me. And I know that sounds ridiculous, and it's probably almost frustrating to hear that right now, but it forced me to take a look at my life. It forced me to take a look at my eating habits, my exercise, start taking vitamins and supplements, because it's just the way that you get through this is just living a healthier life overall. Like, it forced me to get my sleep in check and go to bed earlier and get the number of hours of sleep that I actually needed. And it got me off of caffeine for a while. The only thing that I'm drinking now is coffee and water. And because I've just gotten this heightened health conscious mindset. And so it genuinely is the best thing that ever happened to me. And I'll say this to end. This neuroplastic approach to healing the underlying anxiety and subsequently the DPDR, it's transferable to everything else. It's how you solve anger problems. It's how you communicate differently. It's how you decide how you want to show up in the world and how you want to show up for other people. It's a skill that's highly transferable to all other things that you want to change about yourself. So look, guys, I just want to say I empathize with you. I felt like this for a long time, and I know how terrifying it is, and it will go away. If you do these things, if you adopt the healthy habits, if you focus on this neuroplastic approach to adjusting your thoughts and not fall into these loops of thinking and catastrophizing, it's fixable. And it's a very slow process, but you're going to be a much, much better equipped human being when you come out of it, because I know that I am. And I hope you found this video helpful and informative and not too long. So I'm going to leave the comment section open for now, but I might turn it off depending on how it goes, because these videos tend to turn into like a lot of negativity in the comments. Like, I can't get out of this feeling. Please help me. I'm panicking. Those are the exact thoughts that are going to keep you where you are. So if you do feel the need to comment on this video, comment some wins. Like, I started here and now I'm here, so I do believe that I can get here. Or these are some things that I found helpful, or encouraging other people that they can get through this. Maybe you've gone through this and you're out the other side. But keep the comment section positive. There is nothing good about complaining. It hurts you, it hurts other people. So I hope you found this video useful. Thank you so much for watching, and good luck.